let's talk about what causes diabetes. Fat causes diabetes, not sugar. But somehow people believe, and I know why, they believe that sugar causes diabetes because after all, they have high sugar in their blood and they make the most direct connection between the sugar on their spoon and the sugar in their blood, but it doesn't work that way. This all began, straightening out this misinformation began in 1927 with Shirley Sweeney, who asked his medical students to volunteer for some experiments in 1927. And medical students were anxious, of course, to volunteer for studies. And what they did is they fed these students 2 days of a high carbohydrate diet. Now look at what this diet contained. It contained sugar, candy, pastry, white bread, baked potatoes, syrup, bananas, rice, and oatmeal. And every one of the students tested normal, non-diabetic, normal blood sugars. And then they tested them with a high-fat meal. And that meal consisted of, or 2 days of high-fat meals, olive oil, butter, mayonnaise, egg yolks, and cream. These healthy students all tested diabetic. Fat causes diabetes, not sugar. This should have all been settled by Percival Hemsworth's work, which was published in 1940. In the British Medical Journal, extensive research showed that when you take people who have type 2 diabetes, you fed them high-fat meals, they develop high blood sugar levels, as you see in this chart. Whereas when you fed them a high carbohydrate diet, their blood sugar levels were normal. Yes, they went up after you eat a little bit for a while, but not like they would on a high-fat meal. We should have had no arguments since 1940 in Hemsworth's classic work. Hemsworth is considered the father of diabetes. At the University of Washington, up here in Seattle, they did a study where they took type 2 diabetics, and they initially started them on a diet that was 45% sugar. It was dextrose and maltose, which are simple sugars. We're not talking about potatoes and rice and corn. We're talking about sugar. 45% of the calories as sugar, and then they doubled it to 85% of the calories from sugar. Every aspect of their diabetes improved when they doubled the sugar intake. So they concluded in their paper, these data suggest that high carbohydrate diets increase the sensitivity of peripheral tissues to insulin. In other words, sugar makes insulin work better, and fat paralyzes insulin. Walter Kepner did some classic work. I talk a lot about Walter Kepner because he's one of my most important mentors. Walter Kepner used diet therapy. He was at Duke University for 7 decades. And for 2 of those decades, he supported the medical school at Duke University because of his success with the rice diet. People came from all over the world to be involved with the rice diet to get cures from serious problems like heart disease and heart failure and arthritis and sometimes, often, type 2 diabetes. And his results are 100% of the diabetics, type 2, were cured with a diet that was 93% sugar. Here's the breakdown of the rice diet. The rice diet consists of white rice, fruit juice, and table sugar. Now, if you were underweight, they would often add 500 grams of extra table sugar to the diet. That's 2,000 calories of table sugar. And yet they cured the patients of type 2 diabetes. With type 2 diabetics, an experiment was done recently. In fact, this was done, in 1989. That's not so recent, but it certainly falls within what I would call recent research. And what they did is they fed omega-3 fats, supplements, to type 2 diabetics, and it increased their fasting sugars by 22%. and it increased their sugars after their meals by 35% by adding fish oil pills, omega-3 fats. Fat paralyzes insulin. In a more recent study on type 1 diabetics, they fed them high-fat meals. And what they showed is that the high-fat meals paralyzed insulin activity, and they required more insulin than they did on a low-fat meal. 13 versus 9 units of insulin more. Fat paralyzes insulin. Carbohydrates, including sugar, make insulin work better.